Hello, and welcome to Free My Mojo, podcast number 37. And today we are talking about money is merely an energy exchange. And we'll be talking about how to know you're valuable. And it is so interesting to me that when we talk about money, it is almost always one of the largest issues that face so many people. Whether people consider themselves to be creative or not creative, whether they're an artist or a banker, it always seems that money is something that frequently prevents people from doing what they really want to do, which, if we think about it, is really not what money is for. There have been several times when I've talked to someone about a career move they wanted to make, or a place they wanted to go, or something they wanted to do. And frequently it comes down to the idea that, well, there just is not money. And it would be so amazing if we could find a way to just see money differently. I think that sometimes people, when they check their bank accounts, some people actually don't check bank accounts, and some people don't have bank accounts. So people have such a strange relationship around bankers and taxation and money and all of these things, when in truth, it's really just a system. So if we could see that money is just a system that was created to help us stay organized. And instead, for a lot of people, money is so much more. For some people, and I'm sure you know some of them, money is a god. Money is what keeps people doing something they no longer want to do. Money is something that keeps people living where they no longer want to live. Money is this all-encompassing, powerful, false god. And it's just not those things. What money really is a resource. Just in the same way that anything else is a resource. And we're in a constant exchange of resources. And we've all heard stories of things like how the word salary came to be, because it came from the word sal, which came from the word salt, and that soldiers were paid in salt because salt was such a precious commodity at some point. There were times when things like spices were so incredibly valuable, wars were fought over them. So money, for many reasons over time, has created its own artificial, unnatural hierarchy in which those who have money have somehow been bestowed greater value than those who do not have money. And I could go back through the history of humans, and we could talk about this all day, because the energy around money is so complicated. And for many of us, we grew up in a family where there was a story around the energy of money. For example, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. And in my parents' mind, when they had this, they had a jewelry business and they had a restaurant, and my mother had a boutique. So cash and going to work and having to work was frequently used as an excuse, I think, sometimes, when people didn't necessarily want to do things. Now, the other part of this may have been that maybe my parents loved what they did so much that they wanted to be doing what they wanted to do a lot. So we all have different stories around money. Some of us grew up in a family where maybe dad was the provider and mom had to go to dad for money. Or maybe we grew up in a single parent home. Or maybe we grew up away from our parents because they didn't have the money. So oftentimes in family, there is a myth or a story or a legacy around money. I, for one, am someone who grew up in a family that was very wealthy when I was a child, who, as my parents aged, they lost a lot of their money through a number of different things. So there's been this turbulent story around money in my family for a long time. And the realization that I personally did not want to experience the feast and famine of money. And I wanted to try and get to a place where money was a way that I got to do things. In other words, if you signed up for this course, then your supporting this course allowed me to do more of this type of work. So it's really hard. And we frequently see people who don't get enough money to live on, or who can't afford to do the things they want, or can't afford to go what they want to do. So one of the things this is really about is really identifying, what is the role of money in my life? What is the role of money in my world? How do I feel about relationships based on money? In other words, if I've got a partner, what is my relationship with money with my partner? If I've got children, what is my relationship with money to my children? If I have parents, what is my relationship with money? What relationship did my grandparents give my parents that my parents gave me? And what story have I been living out of around money? And do I use money as an excuse, or do I use money as a resource? Is money merely feedback? In other words, as an investigative reporter student many years ago in college, I remember my professor saying to me, if you ever want to see what somebody values, look at how they spend their money. Because when they have money, the thing that they value most, they will spend all their money on. And it tells us a lot how people spend their money. And if we want to look at ourselves and look at our money and where our money goes, we'll see a pattern. And one of the stages of awareness is seeing patterns, and not judging a pattern, but just seeing patterns. I spent a huge amount of my life buying shoes that were high heels, that were were considered to be attractive, but good grief, they caused me so much pain. And then I literally came to a point where I was in LA for a film project, and I went into a store and a shoe shop, and I tried on a pair of shoes, and they were $2,600. And I remember thinking to myself, in what way could I justify $2,600 for this pair of shoes when there's so many other things that I could do with money? And so that was my value. But for example, if you're a designer or you're someone who's into the need for a pair of shoes that are $2,600, then that's a different universe than the one I'm living in as someone who is making films for social causes. So what freedom from money worries could you benefit from having? In other words, in what way could you serve yourself by revisiting your relationship around money as anything other than an energy flow? And if that's the case, and if you're struggling, are you blocking your energy in some way related to money? And this is a huge question, because if you have so much money that money is of no concern to you and no worry to you, is it possible that you could be using your money to help other people or investing your money in a way that made a difference to the world? And so when we look at money, really a lot of it is really understanding, what is the value that I bring? How much am I worth? What is my worth? What are my skills? And really confronting the relationship with money. For example, if we owe a debt or we owe a lot of money, just facing it, just making an arrangement, making a step towards it. And these are all things that are really very complicated and run very deep in families and in individuals. And my encouragement to you is to really ask you, what would your ideal relationship with money be? And what would be the ideal scenario for you in creating money? I was in a course and he made a great suggestion, which is everyone needs to know what their golden number is. Everyone needs to know, how much do I need to earn each month, each week, each day perhaps, to be well, to pay my bills and have some money above that? What is that number? What do I really need? And how much of that is realistic? In other words, do I actually understand that? And when he asked this question in the workshop, he asked who in the room knew what their golden number was. And I felt much better because no one put their hand up. Even the accountants in the room did not put their hand up. So understanding that your value comes in many ways, and maybe not just in money, because a lot of times we live in cultures where teachers and caretakers and people who are really important don't get the kind of money that other people get. And maybe we're starting out in something, or maybe we're an artist, or maybe our partner is studying or something like that, and therefore not able to bring in the money right now. But if we could find a way to really see the value of our creative energy, to really see the value of our well-being, of our health, of the beauty of our soul, if we could just understand that some serious atrocities have happened to our environment of late in the last few decades, all under the name of money and profit. So for many of us, there is a turning coming. There is a turnaround coming in which we're going to have to, not just as an individual, but as a culture, as a society, as a world, we're going to have to start asking ourselves some serious questions about how important money is, and if money is the deciding factor in the quality of life, in the condition of our environment. And I, for one, have been studying what they're calling deep ecology and really looking at the value of the earth and the land and the resources of the world and the things that are going to be depleted and cannot be renewed with money. Because here's the thing, when somebody's time comes and it's time for them to go, an illness or death or an accident or anything has happened, no amount of money can reverse that. You think about all the incredibly wealthy people who've died young, and no amount of money could reverse that. So let's value money. Let's know that money is important to our dreams and to our vision and to our well-being. But let's put some perspective around money in place. And let's realize that by investing in experiences, that is a very wise investment for us. Because as far as I can tell, consumerism is really something that really can cause a lot of problems, not just for us as individuals, but for us as a culture and as a world. So it's definitely something we want to look at. And for goodness sake, when we talk about value in money, please don't put yourself on discount. Please don't give yourself away for free. Please allow people to support you, to encourage you, to offer you support financially. In the old days, a lot of artists and creative people or do-gooders or even religious people had patrons, people who supported them and who encouraged them because they believed in them. So we need to find ways to fund and invest and to find ways to support our dreams and missions and to know that this is a generous universe and that we are supported in it. So today's talk is a little complicated. I almost feel like it could be its own book, but it's definitely something that there's need for healing around, and that we deserve to be affluent, we deserve to be prosperous, and we deserve to realize this is an abundant universe and that we are part of that abundance. So I ask you to value yourself, and I thank you so much for joining me today on this podcast. Thank you.
Oh.